Smell that? Yeah, that's not turf. That's fear. Because the NFL just messed with the wrong family. Draft night, cameras flashing, phones buzzing, every top prospect waiting for their call. But one name never came. Shedeur Sanders. 5th round projection. 0 calls, 0 texts. Not even a courtesy "will be in touch." Just silence. And when the dust settled, people started asking the one question the league really didn't want to answer. Was this just bad luck? Or was it sabotage? Because the Sanders family isn't staying quiet. They're taking the NFL to court. And if what they're claiming is true, this could become the biggest draft day scandal in football history. Welcome to the story the NFL hoped you'd never hear. Draft night was supposed to be Shedeur Sanders' coronation, the night the world saw what the college game already knew. Cameras captured him stepping onto that red carpet in a custom suit, calm and collected. The definition of confidence. Every detail screamed ready for the league. His phone was fully charged, his family beside him, his father, Coach Prime himself, smiling with that signature glint that says it's already handled. But what unfolded over the next few hours looked less like a celebration and more like a slow-motion ambush. Pick after pick, name after name, the stage filled, but not for Shedeur. Teams called out players with stats that couldn't touch his. Quarterbacks whose highlight reels ended with question marks, not exclamation points. Yet somehow, the phone never rang. Fans kept refreshing their screens, waiting for that name to pop up. Nothing. Just silence. The kind that feels heavy, deliberate, wrong. Deion's smile started to fade. His son, the same one who'd thrown darts behind a leaky Colorado offensive line and carried an entire program on his shoulders, was being treated like he didn't exist. The same media that couldn't stop hyping him all season suddenly looked away. No interviews, no analysts defending him, just an awkward, empty air between picks. Even worse, it wasn't just oversight. Whispers started spreading online that some teams were told to avoid the drama, that taking Shedeur meant taking on the primetime spotlight. But how does a league built on stories and stars run from one? It didn't make sense. By the time the final round came and went, you could feel it. This wasn't about skill, stats, or tape. It was politics. Plain and simple. Something deeper was at play. Something that smelled off. And when Deion realized what had really happened, the mood shifted instantly. This wasn't disappointment anymore. It was declaration. Because if the NFL thought it could bury his son's name under their silence, the Sanders family was about to make sure the world heard it louder than ever. The morning after the draft, the sports world woke up to chaos. But this time, it wasn't coming from the NFL. It was coming straight from the Sanders camp. What started as disbelief had turned into something sharper, louder, and more dangerous. Action. Because Deion Sanders doesn't do silence. Not when it comes to his son. Not when it comes to fairness. Behind the scenes, phones were ringing, lawyers were moving, and statements were being drafted. The Sanders family wasn't tweeting cryptic messages or posting sad emojis. They were filing a lawsuit. Not a publicity stunt, not a headline grab, a full-on, paper-thick, lawyer-signed lawsuit accusing the NFL of something no one dared say out loud: sabotage. Their claim? That Shedeur wasn't just overlooked, he was blackballed. That certain teams quietly, strategically agreed to pass on him to avoid what they called the prime effect. Translation? Too much attention, too much media, too much personality. The same league that built its empire on spectacle suddenly decided one player had too much of it. Deion wasn't just a father in this moment. He was a general. Every interview clip from him became a bullet point in the court of public opinion. "I know what's behind the curtain," he said, "and I'm not letting my son walk into something that's not built for him." Those words, calm but sharp, hit like a threat wrapped in wisdom. He wasn't just protecting Shedeur. He was exposing the system. And here's the irony. The league that spent years marketing swagger, selling individuality, and celebrating storylines was now facing a player who embodied all three, and they didn't know how to handle it. The lawsuit didn't just challenge the draft results. It challenged the image of the NFL itself. Because if the Sanders family could prove even a shred of collusion, the league wouldn't just be embarrassed. It would be exposed. And as every lawyer knows, once the prime spotlight hits you, there's nowhere left to hide. Inside NFL headquarters, the atmosphere went from confident to cautious overnight. No one wanted to say it out loud, but the league was nervous. Not just because of the lawsuit, but because of what it represented. A direct challenge to the unspoken hierarchy that's ruled the NFL for decades. The Sanders family wasn't just calling out one bad draft night. They were calling out the machine itself. Executives scrambled to control the narrative. Anonymous sources started leaking soft excuses. His interviews didn't go well. Teams had system concerns. He's still developing. But none of it added up. The tape was undeniable. Shedeur Sanders was accurate, composed, clutch, and had already proven he could perform under chaos. His biggest flaw? He came with a camera crew, a confident father, and millions of eyes watching. And that's what scared them. Because the NFL has always liked its stars, but only if they play by the league's rules. Shedeur wasn't built to fit inside a box. He was raised to build his own. That kind of independence makes old school executives uncomfortable. They don't know how to control it, so they do the next best thing. They avoid it. Sources close to the situation revealed something wild. During pre-draft meetings, several teams reportedly discussed the prime problem. Not Shedeur's game, not his stats, but his presence. The media storm that comes with a Sanders. The Netflix cameras. The viral moments. The sense that if you drafted him, you were also drafting his father, the most charismatic man in football. To them, that was too much. They didn't want primetime in their press conferences or sideline shots. They wanted silence, predictability, and control. So they ghosted the most electric prospect of the year. But here's what they didn't expect. The silence made the story bigger. Every ignored call, every past pick, every no comment turned into fuel for the fire. The very thing they feared, the spotlight, was now unavoidable. And this time, it wasn't just shining on Shedeur Sanders. It was burning straight through the NFL's polished image. To the public, the NFL draft is all glitz. Flashing lights, commissioner handshakes, highlight reels. But behind those curtains, in the private suites and war rooms, it's a high-stakes poker game. And that's where the real story of Shedeur Sanders' draft night begins. According to sources close to multiple front offices, the conversations around Shedeur weren't about his ability. They were about risk management. Not the kind you find on a scouting report, but the kind that happens when image meets politics. A few teams allegedly questioned whether drafting Shedeur meant signing up for prime time. Others wondered if Coach Prime would expect influence in team decisions. It wasn't about the playbook, it was about power. One executive reportedly put it bluntly, "We can't have the cameras following us every week. It becomes their show, not ours." That comment, now leaked and circulating through sports blogs, might as well have been Exhibit A in the Sanders family's case, because it shows exactly what they're fighting, a fear of visibility. Meanwhile, teams that needed quarterbacks, teams with losing records, desperate for a spark, passed on Shedeur like he was radioactive. They picked players with lower stats, less leadership, and zero star power. One scout even joked off record, "We'd rather draft a quiet 6'4" statue than deal with primetime." That quote didn't age well. By the fourth round, even analysts started whispering on live TV. Something wasn't right. The ratings were high. But the vibe was off. When Shedeur's name still hadn't been called, the tone shifted from confusion to disbelief. Even the commentators fell silent. An eerie kind of silence that said, they know something we don't. And they were right, because this wasn't an oversight. It was orchestration. The kind of behind-the-scenes maneuvering that only makes sense when you realize just how powerful one last name still is. The NFL didn't just pass on a quarterback. It passed on a movement, and the people who built that movement weren't about to stay quiet. When the Sanders family filed their lawsuit, it wasn't a press stunt. It was a statement of war. Within hours, the story detonated across sports media. ESPN went into emergency coverage mode. Social media exploded with hashtags like Justice for Shedeur and hashtag NFL Exposed. Overnight, what began as a draft night snub transformed into the biggest scandal the league had seen in years. The complaint was more than just a list of grievances. It was a manifesto. Page after page detailed patterns of discrimination, favoritism, and silent blackballing. It named names, executives, scouts, and even a few anonymous sources who had suddenly gone quiet. The Sanders legal team accused the league of intentional image manipulation, a fancy phrase meaning they buried a player to protect their brand. The evidence? Meeting logs, text transcripts, and internal memos that allegedly hinted at a containment strategy, keeping high-profile, media-heavy players out of small-market teams to maintain control. It was shocking, even for the NFL. These weren't just accusations. They were breadcrumbs leading straight to the commissioner's office. The league's response was predictable. Deny everything, play calm, and respect the process. But you could feel the panic between the lines of every official statement. PR teams worked overtime. Lawyers drafted talking points. Reporters who once hyped the draft now whispered about its cracks. And through it all, Shedeur stayed quiet. No tweets, no interviews, just silence. But it wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The same silence that once got him labeled arrogant now looked like power. Every day he didn't speak, the story grew louder. Deion, on the other hand, played offense. He started dropping hints in interviews about meetings, about calls, about conversations the public never heard. You can't hide truth forever, he said, with that signature calm grin. Eventually, it plays itself out, like film. And that's when everyone realized this lawsuit wasn't just about money or draft positions. It was about rewriting the rules of control. The NFL thought the storm would fade. It didn't. The longer the league stayed silent, the louder the noise grew. Sports talk shows turned into courtrooms, and every analyst had a take. Some called it a conspiracy. Others called it karma. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Sanders name had once again shaken the system. Coach Prime didn't have to shout. His legacy spoke for him. Every clip from Colorado, every viral quote about discipline and belief resurfaced like prophecy. "We ain't hard to find," he once said, and now the entire league was finding out what that meant. Behind closed doors, teams started scrambling. Quiet phone calls, private texts, anonymous sources clarifying that they had always been interested in Shedeur. Too late. The damage was done. The NFL's image, the machine of control, power, and predictability, had cracked. Meanwhile, Shedeur was already training again. Cameras caught him throwing lasers on a practice field in Texas. No logo on his chest, no shield on his sleeve. Just hunger. Every pass looked like a message. Every drill felt like defiance. Because this isn't just a football story anymore. It's about legacy, about a family daring to challenge the most powerful sports organization in America and refusing to bow down. The league tried to silence primetime energy. Instead, it accidentally reignited it. The smoke from the lawsuit hasn't even cleared, and already the league can feel the aftershocks. Sponsors are nervous. Journalists are circling. Players, especially the new generation, are watching closely. Because if Shedeur wins this, even partially, it changes everything. For decades, the NFL has thrived on control. They decide who becomes a star, who fades into silence, who gets the narrative, and who gets forgotten. But Shedeur Sanders' story cracked that illusion. He didn't need a logo to be relevant. He didn't need the league to go viral. He built his own spotlight, and that's what scares them. Inside front offices, quiet panic has become policy. Execs are whispering about damage control, trying to prevent other young players from following the Sanders blueprint. Build a brand, speak boldly, and refuse to play the silent company man. Whether the lawsuit wins or not doesn't even matter anymore. The statement has already been made. The league might still control the stage, but the Sanders family controls the story. And that's the new era unfolding before our eyes. One where athletes no longer wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. The NFL thought it was just another offseason headline, but it might have just witnessed the start of a revolution.